Hello, my most compassionate art students. Welcome to art lesson number 7 of Distance Learning Partnership. Today we are going to learn about an art form called the tangle. The tangle is so much fun because basically it's just patterns repeated and it's very relaxing, really. I like to do this kind of artwork when I am listening to an audiobook or some music, maybe in the evening as kind of a nice way to wind down or spend a little bit of quiet time in the afternoon. So I'm going to teach you how to tangle, and we are going to do a tangled garden. So what you're going to need today is white paper and some kind of a pen. I chose a fine line pen. You could use just a regular ballpoint pen would be fine for this, or if you have a very fine felt tip pen would be good. If you don't have that, you can use just a colored pencil or a regular pencil, or even a washable marker. But our lines are going to be small, so that's why I'm using a fine line pen like this one. All right, so let's talk about the tangle. These are repeated lines and patterns, and let's just take a look at this one really quickly here. What we're doing for our garden are these large sweeping arc shapes. Kind of remind me of an S or a spiral. And I have some fat ones like this one. I have some very, very thin ones like right here. And these are supposed to be our different vines and grasses and flowers and leaves. Of course, this is kind of a zany garden. It's just kind of whimsical and fun. So let's start with a clean sheet of paper, and I will just walk through. You can use a pencil to start with and go over your lines with pen if you'd like, or you could just start right out with pen. Now, the nice thing about tangling is there's really no wrong way to do it. You really can work with anything you do and turn anything into part of your project. So I'm going to start with kind of a wide vine here for my base. And I want to get narrower and narrower and narrower here until I finally touch the other line. There we go. That's the idea, starting wider, getting narrower. All right, now to add to this, I'm just going to start throwing some other curvy, spirally type shapes on here. And then I get to decide what I've drawn, if it comes behind something or in front of something or to the side. And I want to make some sort of different shapes, trying to make sure that I'm not making just the same line over and over again. I'm not actually even really copying my first one, so it's going to turn out a little different than that. But that's okay because grasses grow in all sorts of funny ways. So adding just your basic shapes in here. It's going to get a nice, pretty garden growing. And the idea is just to come to a point every time you stop a leaf. Are you coming to a point in a spiral or just kind of a sharp end? So that's the basic step there, and you can add as many things as you want in here. As much as you want growing up. I might just do one more wiggly leaf back here. I'm going to let this come behind this shape and come to my point. There we go. All right, I feel like my garden is kind of blowing in the breeze this way. Might have a wind coming from this direction. Now is the time to start adding in all of our patterns and shapes that really makes this what we call a tangle. So here's the fun part, if you haven't been having fun already, which I'm sure you have. Now you get to decide what's my pattern going to start out. And it really doesn't matter what you pick. The point, though, is to do this pattern for a little while and then change to something else. So I'm just going to kind of demonstrate a few little patterns here for you, but then I want to see where your imagination takes your patterns. These look kind of like fish scales to me. I'm making these by making this little rainbow shape and stacking one on top of the other, and I just am making sure that whenever my rainbow touches the ground, it's on the top of another rainbow instead of in between. And this makes the scale pattern and kind of helps me to judge where my next rainbow needs to be. I'm just shooting for the middle of the rainbow right below it. All right, well, it's time to go on to a different pattern anyway, except I think I'd like my scales to look like they continued through here. And maybe now I will transition into some large and small dots. I don't think I used this pattern on my example one. It just came to mind. When I'm tangling, after a while, I come onto some ideas that are kind of my favorites, and then I like to work that pattern in wherever I can on different projects. Remember it for another project. I think it's time for a new pattern. I think we're going to finish this one with a nice plaid. Plaid lines have lines going one direction and lines going another. And there's usually a little bit of thickness to some lines that are not in other lines. Now, in order to make your tangle look really interesting, we want to add some variance. And the way we're going to do that, since we're doing a black and white project here, is we're going to make sure that we have different textures, different thicknesses of lines, some dark areas and some light areas. So I'm going to pull my other one back here and explain that a little bit. So looking here, you can see I have some really nice bold dark lines here, followed by some very fine lines here with not a lot of black in there. There's a lot of white still, a lot of white left. And here, with my large circles, does anybody recognize this circle exercise from before? I have a lot of white space left. So I wanted to make sure on either side of that I added some bold darkness, again, by coloring in some of the circles here, by making some of my zigzag lines really thick and bold. And going back and forth between thick lines and thin lines, dark places and light places, that adds that interest that makes up for the fact that we don't have any color in this project. And it really becomes a very beautiful and intricate piece. So I'm going to just set this right here so that if you want to pause this video, you can actually look at my different patterns and see if there's any of these patterns you'd like to use in your piece. Well, have fun tangling, and I can't wait to see your zany tangled gardens.